Hi, everyone. My name is Oscar Newton, and I have with me Ayeni Ekunle.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's so good to be on your show today. And primarily, we're discussing the Danfo Law of Marketing, and Ochiko will be telling us a lot of insights from that direction based on what he has seen, experienced, and spoken of, especially if you don't know what the Danfo is. Danfo are the yellow cabs you find in Lagos and only Lagos, Nigeria, globally. You can't find it anywhere else. So, Ochiko, take over the conversation now and will tell us some of the insights he has learned from the Danfo Law of Marketing.
All right. So, it's so interesting that we're talking about the downfall of marketing because this largely has to do with our approach to marketing, particularly businesses, individuals. What's your approach to marketing? And here we're looking at the downfall law of marketing, institutional silence versus personality-led dominance. A large percent of the time, most businesses don't have the aggression, the agility of the agbero. And agbero here is the term that is commonly used for the guys that supervise the system of the downfall drivers. Now, typically, what you notice about these guys is that they are fearless, they are angry, they don't take no for an answer. And that's what we want to really dive on today. But before I go on, I want to ask you, Dario, what's your experience? Have you ever gotten to a point where you decided to deploy this level of marketing, maybe in past projects, past campaigns, before?
Okay, so typically I tell people if you can't be like an agbero or be like the Danfo driver or the person who leads the conversation at the call out or the shout outs, you cannot succeed in Nigeria. So the power of aggressive marketing and outright answer for any kind of request you get. So, for example, you can be at the bus stop and then you will receive about 100 rejections from these guys, and they are there telling you they are not going your way, or sometimes they are receiving a lot of rejections in terms of people saying your boss is not good, your boss is not beautiful, I don't like the seats, I don't like the chair, I don't like the outlook. But you keep pushing very, very hard. And the whole idea is at the end of the day, you must get results. So they only want to get about 15 or 20 people or maybe 10 people into their bosses, but they are aggressively pushing very hard. So they keep making the noise. And if you go into the bus stops or the garages here, you find them making a lot of noise. Everybody shouting, calling their own people. And they have thousands of people passing by, but all they need is just 10, 20. So that goes beyond Pareto principle. So if you go to a place called Obale in the other, the bridge, and you push very hard, you will notice that there's something they do there. They keep shouting, from the person shouting beggar, the other person is shouting Ajota, the other person is shouting my 2, my 12. And you just get all kind of calls, but you know where you're going to, you'll figure it out. And the interesting thing is that they get their boss all filled up very fast. So beyond that now, how do we apply those laws to marketing? How do you handle rejection? How do you overcome rejection? So a bit of that will be discussed by Ochiko.
It's quite interesting that you talked about rejection because the admirals, the guys that own that particular system, they don't take no for an answer. So whether you reject them or not, as a matter of fact, you can tell the story, you can tell what the downfall has been through just by looking at the downfall. If you see a brand new downfall, you know that downfall just came, it just started work 2 days ago, 3 days ago. But when you see that the downfall is scratched, the buses, one light is out, I'm not sure I've seen a downfall bus with hazard lights before. That's to tell you the kind of experience that downfall has gone through. And I want to say this related to the question that was asked about rejection. A large percent of the time, when you get into a space, you find a lot of competitors. And one thing you understand is once the market is becoming very saturated, there's one thing that happens. You notice that you have giants, you have industry key leaders already playing a huge role. So when you now bring yourself to the spotlight, one thing that is certain is you will get a lot of rejections. One thing that will bring you to the spotlight to become a major competitor is when you refuse to back down. And that is where the Danfo Law of Marketing comes into play. You must not take no for an answer. You must be aggressive. You must, the same way a Danfo boss looks like should reflect in the character of how you, should reflect in your character, in the character of your business, in the character of your campaigns, your marketing strategies. You must be aggressive about it. And the thing about it is that you don't get to see or experience success in marketing just from one campaign, 2 campaigns, 3 campaigns. Sometimes you might have to go over it multiple times. I've had these experiences before. Have you had an experience where you deployed one campaign? Maybe it didn't turn out well. What was the feedback for you? How do you take feedbacks how do you take feedback from a campaign that doesn't go successful?
Okay, fantastic. So it's normal for you to have failed campaigns, and most people don't agree with it because they'll say your strategy was wrong from the first instance.
Yeah.
So how do you handle a campaign that started maybe a month before COVID shut down? Those are things that are beyond us. Or you're running a campaign on the weekends when you have Chelsea playing Man U or something, and the market is swaying in a different direction. You're talking about school holidays, and sometimes are not factored in. And then you talk about the market realities, economic factors, the price of oil changes overnight, and you're running campaign in the same market for a particular product. And then people are not having the extra funds or extra excess funds to buy or purchase things at the level you want them to purchase. And so some realities are there. And then the platforms also have their own algorithm being changed overnight. Sometimes you're running a campaign on Facebook or on Instagram, and overnight the whole algorithm changes. Yeah, it falls back on you. Your campaign will fail because of your strategy has just failed because you can't control the other party. But there are some things that are very specific that you handle during the course of a campaign. So, for example, you do an email campaign. Email marketing typically should not fail. Should give you direct inbox, and that's the only kind of campaign that even if the person leaves that spot for maybe you don't check their email for 10 years or 5 years or 2 years or 1 year, they'll still come back to meet the same campaign in their inbox. And it always require an action for you to take out that campaign if it's in their inbox. So those are the kind of experiences for those kind of campaign. You talk about LinkedIn, prices change. You talk about Instagram, you talk about Facebook, prices change. The platform can also shadow bind your campaign. A couple of things that are beyond your control. So one campaign is never sufficient. So you do multiple campaigns. You use that to gather a lot of strategies or information, especially when you don't have existing data or historical data that you use for prediction. Or you do a lookalike campaign if you have already existing database that you then use to drive such campaign. So most times, when you're dealing with people, sometimes are saying, "Oh, I did not see my campaign." Then I ask, "Are you the persona I'm supposed to be targeting?" Because if it's not a fast-moving consumer good, I don't know why I should target you. So if I'm selling a luxury good, maybe luxury set of goods, or maybe a high-end premium, maybe real estate or something, we're talking of going to places like maybe Ikoyi in Lagos, Banana Island, and you're selling and you're telling me you should see my campaign. You will never see it because you're not premium enough to see that campaign. Or you're telling me to sell some things like maybe premium jets. There was a time we're selling some empty legs for jets. And the kind of people who see that campaign, people can afford maybe 500, 600,000 payment at a shot at that time for them to travel. So how many people want to go between Lagos and Abuja and pay 500K for a ticket? You shouldn't see it. In the common spaces, if you're in your house, you shouldn't see it. You see it exactly the kind of persona we define for those campaigns. So understanding that also platforms work in different ways. Facebook primarily work based on what you've been searching, based on your interests primarily. When you go into the other side of Meta, which is like Google, they go based on keywords. So when you're setting your parameters, you set based on those two. Then when you then begin to go into LinkedIn, they set based on location, title, experience, and all of that. That's how you set your advert metrics. So many people don't know these things, but they come and tell you that, "Oh, I did not see my ad. What's your interest? What have you been searching for?" They're serving you based on that interest. And that's how the algorithms are designed. So coming back to the Danfo whole model, one of the things you will learn is that if you're going in a particular direction, let's say I pick a Lagos case study, which is where Danfo is prominent. Somebody is going from Bega to Oshodi. They keep picking everybody along the way. You hear Estate bus stop, Ogudu bus stop, all the bus stop, Charlie Boy. And by the time they get to Oshodi, they then discover that in the bus, they have another extra 10 people or 5 people who are going towards First Stack. Then you hear the guy change his voice and say, you know what, let's do mile two.
Mm-hmm.
And then by the time they start shouting mile two, they begin to pick people going to First Stack and all of those places, social, solar and all of that. So you're wondering why you're not adjusting your business to the new business reality. You discover lights of KFC are selling things that are contemporary to us. So it's the flexibility, it's the ability for you to stay in the market, even still running the same vehicle, but your market realities are totally different. Because as you begin to move from face to face, agility comes to play. For example, there are people who were supposed to hire, as I was supposed to hire an extra 6 people to start working on proposals and all of that in the office. By the end, they have them now being done by AI and some other things who can help us do a better work than what humans will do. So why should I then still be paying somebody salary because AI is really sorting out some of those things? So it's just agility and adaptation. I remember I read about the protest about calculators, that calculators will make children very lazy. That was in 1984, 1986, thereabout. I studied mathematics, interestingly. So there's a protest, very huge protest that that students will become mentally lazy for not using calculators. But today we all use calculators. Later they said, oh, from grade 9 and above in the US, you start using it. But now, even with phones or whatever, you can do anything. That's the same thing AI would do. So I hear people say that, oh, AI will not make children think, will not make them skillful, will not make them productive in terms of writing. Yeah, that's the new reality. If you don't feel like, don't embrace it. It's your own children you don't want to make compete globally, because the level of competition we're going to be having now is going to be mad. And when I mean be mad, you're not competing against your contemporary in your neighborhood again. You're competing with people in other countries with different realities now. So globalization have really kicked in, and the world is now a smaller and a local market where your skills will be hired over the internet in places you've never been to and places you never go to in your lifetime. So those are my summary.
Absolutely amazing. Just talking about this makes me want to, emphasize greatly on agility, where you talked about aggression and agility. It's important that business owners understand that sometimes one campaign can make you understand that, there are several routes that you need to take. So it's not one size fits all. You need to understand that you must be flexible. It's on the screen here we see territorial dominance, which is something that is very synonymous to the Danfo drivers. When the Danfo driver is in traffic, the Danfo driver hates traffic. First of all, he has to find a way to move. His own assignment is that he has to move, and that's because he has targets. He's not willing to spend 10 minutes in traffic when he can just find a way through the streets. And that's the kind of mindset you need to have in marketing. You must be aggressive, particularly when you have targets to meet. There are situations that would require you to expand in terms of like getting you people that know that, particularly in marketing. You see, marketing is in different levels, and I want to actually speak to marketing in different levels because just a while ago we were having a conversation about the entry point of marketing, which is what you hear people say, I'm a social media manager. And if you want to break that into detail, you understand that there's the integral part of social media management that just the social media managers don't even know. I mean, if you are talking about running ads, detailed ads, look-alike ads, strategic ads, programmatic ads, these are not conversations for your entry level at this point. Would you want to speak something like that?
So part of what you want to learn most times, they all have all kind of perception, all kind of mindset about marketing. And they come to you to say that, oh, they've learned this, they went to 1-2 day course, or they did something online. It's like learning how to drive or learning how to swim. Usually you cannot learn how to drive by doing theory. You cannot learn how to drive by doing simulation, because the judgments that you need on the highway is different from the judgments you need in the street. You also can't learn how to drive or learn how to swim by just watching some few video that when you get into the water, just float. Jump into the water and see if you can float. That's where you start from. because that's when your fear kicks in. Same thing in digital marketing. A lot of people come and say, "Oh, I know how to do the social media management," because they know how to post. But posting never converts.
Exactly.
There's this thing about vanity metrics where people think like, shares, comment, views are the tangibles. Those are intangibles in marketing. They never convert. The only time social media works is when it brings in value, which is going to retire at the end of the day to financials. A lot of people say, no, that's not what we're looking for. We deal with multinationals. I remember at the time they were looking for how many people comment, impression, and all of that. Later it became how many sales is your department bringing in? So that's how it
And
is.
it's so funny that it's so funny that this actually comes in cycle, because you realize that sometimes you start up the conversation on the premise of maybe some of mind awareness, or let's get likes, shares, let's get people say eyeballs on our page. And then later on, particularly when you get into multiple campaigns, you now see the conversation now twisting into, is this giving the business more money?
More money, yeah. They see your unit as an expense point.
Yeah.
So when they begin to see you as an expense point, just know you're out of marketing. Because usually people don't see at the end goal of marketing is usually sales. It's different from advertising, different from PR or whatever. The end point of marketing is that I want to galvanize you to take a particular behavior and a particular disposition in the market that will lead to sales for us, which means I want you to generate sales for me. I don't think any other activity should be there. That's my own person. That's my own stand. That's where I sit. So the dealing with marketers, they will tell you otherwise. No, do billboard, let people know you, let this one happen. It's all storytelling at the end of the day. Because if you're not bringing in money for us, why should we do marketing? Yeah. So it now cuts down into what sales have to do. And then how do you then convert? How do you manage the user journey? How long does it take for conversions to happen, depending on the category of market or product being sold or services being sold? For example, if I'm selling a shirt, decision is being made within 30 minutes or less, or 15 minutes. That's it. Buyer's journey. But if I'm selling a piece of real estate, it takes 6 months on an average to make sales, because even within here or outside the country, people will take their agent there, take their mother there, take their father, take their spouse, take everybody to do some sort of social validation of the location, the house, and whatever before they make financial decision over it. You hardly find people buy real estate in isolation. They will bring every other third party into the equation before they drag into conclusion. So that time buying cycle is very long as compared to buying a shirt, a phone, or whatever. On my desktop, I can quickly just order for a shirt now and I move on. But I can't just quickly order for a house. So I can't quickly order for a car sometimes. So buying decision takes a longer process. So you must understand the life cycle of purchase before you then start talking about some sort of marketing.
Absolutely amazing. Ladies and gentlemen, conversation was absolutely impactful. More conversations like this, more talks like this on the BP Talks. My name is Oshko Nathan, and with me on Saturday is
Ayala Kondai.
Cheers.
Thanks.
Free audio post-production by alphonic.com.